Hello, everyone. I'm Andre Harris, and I'm the host of What is My Purpose. Today, I'm interviewing Luis Gallegos, and I'd like to also give an honor to God, who's the author and finisher of our faith, the author of our salvation, and I'd like to also salute our veterans and the enlisted men and women in the United States military.
Amen.
Brother Lewis, can you give us a little profile about you and what you do for a living?
Well, I live in Salina, and I'm currently a welder in Great Plains Manufacturing in the area of Kip, and I also do side work and help to make the community an easier place to live in.
Brother Lewis, I've seen a variety of contributions that you made in the community, and can you give us a little background of when you make these contributions, how does it make you feel, and what is the particular purpose for which you make these contributions, whether it be on your job professionally or in the community as a remodeler or a mechanic? I know you do a variety of things, so can
Yeah.
you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I have many children, and in order for me to better appreciate the blessings of those children, I try to instill in my mind that how would I want them to be treated in their communities? Because they're grown now. I'm a little older, and so I took on this mission of my own to help develop things easier for each member of my community. If I see a need, I try to get there and help out. There are times where you can just tell when someone's not feeling well in a certain situation. Perhaps they need, like you said, some mechanic work, their brakes aren't working, which I've done. Maybe their house isn't as nice as they'd like it to be, which I've helped with. And you can't just stay at home and let it come to you. You got to get out there and let your light shine and figure out, okay, what's the best thing I can do for my community?
That's awesome. So, if I could ask you like this, um, how do you prioritize whether you are, a husband, a father, or a professional welder in your in your employment? How do you, if I could ask it like this, what principles do you govern yourself by?
Well, the first thing is I want to make sure that, I treat others with respect. The biggest thing for me is that respect is not earned. It's a fallacy. That is not something that God told us to do. Respect is love. And it's just not enough of it around. And so there's my priority. Once I start respecting someone, giving them the human rights and dignity they deserve, then they can show me what they need, or they can actually show me things I might need to learn.
Great answer. I mean, because no man is an island, and so
There you
when
go.
when you say it like that, um, now does it ever become complicated with how you balance your time between your family and your job?
Oh, yes, it does. At times, I have to prioritize my family first and let um, some of the members of the community almost down because they expect my time as well. Um, I do prioritize my family first because I believe they need as much time as they can. We don't live here a whole lot. And, I'm trying to give as many blessings to my family I can. But I also make sure that my fellow man knows that I love them. And it takes a little time to do that too.
That's great. Now, I want to cite a bishop out of Kansas City, Missouri, Bishop Stephen Halp at Harvest International Ministry. I heard him speak one time, and he was saying that clear cut goals give meaning unto life. Now, when you obey God, that adds meaning and purpose to your life. But on the flip side of that, when you disobey God, it takes away meaning and purpose of your life. Um, what are the metrics that you use to, how shall I say, um, navigate your family through this perplexed economy, and also, um, you know, how do you um, differentiate on in the workplace, you know, what you can do and what you can't do.
Well, to answer it very simply, and it's going to sound too simple, is I pray. I like to pray anywhere I'm at any struggle I have. It's not something that I verbally out loud. At times I may, but most of the time it's a quiet and discerning time, especially if I'm struggling with someone who has a perhaps a pride or is not in the best area of life spiritually. With these persons, I let God handle it. That's the problem that He knows how to handle the best. And so I wait for that small voice in my soul to tell me which way or to guide me into the right area of an answer. And so that's what I do every day. I constantly reach for His words, because if I don't, I tend to get lost.
Phenomenal answer. Let me ask you this way, Brother Lewis, if you were able to encourage someone that wanted to become a welder, because welders are very intricate tradesmen in society, global, is what would you say to encourage someone that would inspire them to get motivated to either go to school and, earn the welding certificate, and then how often should one, if I could ask you like this, how often should one reach out to someone, in order to inspire them, or if I lack the confidence, how should I go about networking with men and women in that profession so that I could get the right direction?
Well, in the most part that I've seen in my welding career, I believe that just to be brave and to understand that the Lord has you in His hands. Once we come clean with our own, let me put it, demons, so to speak, and start to let our confidence build with one move or one swipe of the stick or the welding nozzle. It's a confidence that grows every single time you pick up that torch or every time that stick. If you can't just simply let go and do it, being brave is the hardest thing. Once you take a little step and set small goals. In my day, I do not set a 10-hour goal. In my full day's work, I set from break to break, and in my situation, it's 3 hours at a time. So my goal is to set what I can accomplish, as much as I can accomplish, in them 3 hours. And right before break, I try to assess any mistakes or anything that I could do better for the next 3 hours. It's really simply breaking it down to, it could even be by hour, setting small goals. Because once you've obtained that goal, you're building confidence.
That's awesome. How do you how do you face challenges such as, you're a husband, you're a father, an exemplary man of God in the community, and also a professional welder. So how do you accept various challenges as they come? Do you look at obstacles as opportunities?
Oh, most definitely. I am not. I am a sinner as everybody else is. I'm not a perfect man. I've done things wrong, and in each of those times, I take those as opportunities to bring the glory of God. Step by step, I'm very pragmatic. I take things in small chunks. I've learned over the years, When I was younger, I would just dive in and take as big a chunk as I could. But you tend to fail because you get overwhelmed, and then you don't have the knowledge to complete the task. So I just nibble a little at a time. And that's how I get by.
When you say it like that, um, has there ever been a moment in your time, because trades have changed since you were a child versus to today. Now, when you saw tradesmen as a child and you began to anticipate what it would be like to do a certain task, um, how did you come to grips that welding was the niche for you in your life?
Well, I've done so many things. Construction. I've glazed. I've done windows. I've done so many things, and it was to the glory of God. He let me into these avenues, and so I never picked one thing. The reason why I ended up as a welder is because it's one thing my mother used to tell me. She said, "I had manos de fierro." And I never really understood until I started welding, and that was hands of metal. And it started going into my mind, and as I understood how the lava works and how metal fuses together, just became interested. And not only do I just become interested in that, I still continue to learn. I look up on the internet. There's so much information there. And, just to find out different ways of what's happening in my field and how things are made. It's such a awesome curiosity that I have never lost, and I hope never to.
As a father and as a tradesman, how do you monitor your due diligence and in assessing? Are you being a father that's leaving an impact on his family, or are you giving the contribution that your employer expects of you?
Well, we have to walk in a certain way through the grace of God. And in that grace, for example, there was a young welder. He was put together with me. I started helping him. And as I showed him how to do the project, I showed him 3 times. But then he failed. And he failed miserably. He failed with 29 items. And I was blown away. Okay, and the expectation was that I would show him the correct way to do something, and he should keep doing it correctly. Now, in some way, something happened, a little different click in his own mind, which I didn't expect that. But as a father, as his failure, I knew that I had to help him fix it. And so that's what we did. We worked together side by side. And in the expectation of the company, which I'm sure they didn't expect me to, but I did it anyway, because as a father, I would want somebody to be there next to my child when he messed up, and to put their pride away and bring their humility and say, okay, you messed this up, let's fix it, let's make it right together.
Kind of like a situation I go through, with interviewing and everything. It's, my mentor, Aaron Carter, he's very patient with me, and he works with me to show me how to interview properly and how to work with the equipment, because I go to certain projects and I either don't have the audio right, or it's just little things.
Yeah, and it's a learning experience. And when you have a mentor to be there, not only when you're doing the things right, but when you're doing them wrong as well, that's the confidence builder that young men need.
Well, I'm going to be honest. Most men, have this pride about them, or whether it's their ego, is I can do it by myself. And it's good that you mentioned the word mentor. How often do you get to work with young welders and place yourself in a role as a mentor?
Well, it's not as often as I'd like, but the opportunities do come through my company. and they don't come verbally. They don't just tell me, you have to work with this young guy or this. It doesn't even have to be a young guy, just a person who wants to start welding. You don't have to be young to weld.
So do you encourage a viewer to, mentor?
I do, but I also encourage those who already know to go ahead and lend that hand. Too often a pride or an ego will keep a person from showing others how they do things. I think it's something of a tragedy at times, but it also it limits your love for your brother. Once you show someone and they learn how you do something, and in fact it's to your benefit, that you actually placed them above yourself, and that's what God wants us to do. We got to carry each other's burdens.
And so in your profession, whenever the opportunity comes up, it's important for you to inform, also to inspire, and as they begin to catch on, you're imparting various aspects of your trade to them.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Now, how long have you been a welder?
Well, I've welded about, I can say honestly, 25 years off and on. With this company, I've welded going on 4 years. I was a welder in a company before, and but yeah, I did it. Like I said, I had a lot of opportunities to do different things, but I've always been able to braze and put pipe together. I was a plumber for a while. I mean, I've just had so many blessings when it comes to employment.
Sounds to me like you're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But you've come to the conclusion, this one thing, as the Bible says, this one thing that I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Amen, yes.
Okay. Now, I know that around the globe there are various different trades, and I know that each state has its own regulations. But when you address a job, whether it be welding or whether it be in remodeling or even working on someone's vehicle, how disciplined have you consciously put forth an effort to be consistent?
Well, even an evil person will give their sons and daughters the good things. Okay, this is what I keep in mind, is that, if I can't do the job, I have to humble myself to make sure that the person I am involved with knows that. But if I can, I will most definitely find out exactly all specifications that need to be taken care of and met during that specific job. That's why I love the internet. I love talking to other tradesmen, and they tend to talk back to me. I get my advice as I need it. And then, of course, prayer. The Lord is the biggest advisor in my life.
I remember one project I was working on. It was something I didn't know how to do, but I took the job on anyway. And I felt great about being able to call you, and you walked me through the process. And the job turned out to be successful. The client was happy afterwards. And,
yeah, most definitely.
But that's just the point. That's the purpose of this show, to encourage and inspire individuals to be able to, if you don't have the knowledge, don't be afraid to, call a friend, call a mentor, or, ask the person next to you if they have that experience in that particular area. And so, I mean, I can't, how shall I say, ever, think of a time that I couldn't call on you and you gave me some advice. And, like with the young welder, you walked me through it. Having the tools also helps, because if you have the right tools, plus someone mentoring you, to get to the expected end, is that I often met goals by, calling you up and you saying, well, hey, brother, this is all you got to do. And, I'm grateful to you for that. Just like recently, you know, I ran into a situation, and the Lord say, "Well, hey, call Brother Lewis. He's always been there for you."
Hmm.
And you were like, "Hey, send me the questions, and we'll take it from there." So for that, I'm very grateful. Because I can honestly say, you know, I've never told you, but you know, you've always been there for me, regardless to, how awkward, the timing, for to, me to ask you a question, in a particular area so that I could get over the obstacles that I faced.
Mm,
And so I'm learning that, setbacks are actually opportunities for a comeback.
that's right.
And
That's right.
so, if you could, give thanks to anyone, you know, 3 or 5 people, you know, who would you give thanks to?
Well, I actually would give thanks to my supervisor in KIP. He's a good man, uh, and he lets me do the things I like to do to get the job done. I also would like to thank my father. He showed me one thing that, when you work hard at something, there is going to be a result. Now, if it's a good result or bad result, then you can go from there. But I have also known this one man. His name was Ray Kukowski in Colorado. He showed me what it is to love a brother. And his teachings of just being gentle and patient, I will always take with me everywhere I go. This is what's helped me through any situation with any friend or any stranger as well. His love produced a love in me that will never go away.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about, reflecting on the individuals that have left an impact on, our lives. Now, I know as a father, you're a leader in your family, and as a employee in the company you work for, you are considered a leader. Most people look at leaders as like the president of the United States, a congressman, or a representative. They don't look at when we become friends, like how you helped me through situations. That's being a leader. Um, what would be one of the greatest experiences that you've had as a father, and how you managed your influence on your family and as a husband?
Well, when I involved my sons as they came of age, I believe around 15, 16 years old, they were getting up to that teenage years, and I involved them in a project. And it was a vehicle. It was an old truck I had, and I bought a grinder and a sander, and it was to remodel this truck. And first I didn't say anything. I barbecued, got all the fixings out. We ate together. And then I stepped outside and I began to work. And I was stripping paint, stripping Bondo, just tearing this poor truck apart. And the interest began. And this was the fire I was lighting. Fathers have to light that fire. They have to light that interest. First it was the vehicle, and of course, not all of them were interested in the vehicle. So those who were went on to complete the project, and those who weren't, I started other projects like the computer or writing. These are all little fires I was building to spark that interest in my children. And it can be said in the community as well. all you have to do is do it in front of them to say, oh, wait a minute, I might like that. And so that's what I did.
Great, great. Now, it's hard being a man these days. And you mentioned as a father how you manage your influence interacting with your sons and fathers interacting with their daughters as
Oh,
well.
yeah, of course.
Now, the challenges that men have in America, whether they struggle with low self-esteem or whether they struggle with some area of, you know, lack of confidence in reaching potential goals, would you encourage them to first prioritize by setting reachable goals versus setting realistic goals and then progressing to set long-term goals?
Well, yes, like I said, I mentioned taking little nibbles and little bites of things, and it was a progression I learned by teaching. Okay, once you let your heart to give, then you can start to set small goals. It could be, like I said, hour by hour, minute by minute even, if you're the impatient one, minute by minute really works really well, because then the confidence building really starts to establish in your heart. There's nothing more gratifying than setting a very small goal. And even if it was easy, it was done. And then to continue to set another. And that's how it starts to build up.
Now, would you encourage also male viewers as well as female viewers to seek finding someone that could mentor them? That way, because for myself, I know you and we have a healthy relationship. We have boundaries and principles that we've established over the years that I've come to know you. And how would you go about encouraging someone to, reach out and begin to structure healthy relationships in their lives? That way it would move them toward reaching their professional goals as well as,
social goals.
Exactly.
Yes. Anything that's bad for you, and this is just a little common sense I'm throwing out there.
Okay.
It's bad for you. It's just a fact. If you know it's bad for you, it's always going to be bad for you. And but anything that you want to work hard for tends to flourish into something you like. You can't go along in this life, especially nowadays, thinking that you can work on something easily and it's going to give you something gratifying. If you work hard at something, which is the Lord calls us to work hard so that we can be grateful that we had the chance to work on it, to be grateful that it is completed. These small little traits of confidence building and adjusting to, any kind of problem takes little steps. And those little steps begin to be bigger steps. And then you'll have a history of what to do in certain situations. And it's very gratifying, man.
I know for me, I often listen to one of my radio programs is In Touch Ministries with Dr. Charles Stanley. Yes. And he encourages that, when you're living for the Lord, that nothing that you're doing for the Lord is in vain. And so I know that you mentioned that, you help various individuals in the community, but also there are those times when you can't help them. And so is it wise to have a healthy balance and knowing when to have the ministry of no?
Well, you can't take it all. Only the Lord can. And when you see somebody struggle, it's the hardest thing for me sometimes to leave it alone, because through struggle comes growth. And that's what the Lord has impressed in my life. Nothing that you struggle with is going to come and become invalid. If you're struggling with it, there's a reason, especially if you are in the will of God. You know, searching for Jesus, it does give you such a wonderful feeling in your soul. And those who don't have it, they tend to be gratified by these little steps that I'm speaking of. And whether they know it or not, that's the God's grace that He's given you.
Awesome. What is one of the most hilarious, if I can ask you, what is one of the most hilarious experiences you've had with someone, whether you were working on a project or, just in your personal relationship? What was one of the most hilarious things that you can recall that, it gave you an opportunity to take a step back and just, rejoice in the Lord?
Well, I have to honestly say it was in my printing press days. And, I was trying to set color. There was a lot of jobs to the press work that I was doing. And in that moment, I had a young man who was a roll tender, and he just couldn't pick up the ink right on the knife. It was just so terrible to watch him do it because he made such a mess. But, after my teaching and letting him mess up, and, he would stop the press every now and again, which was a no-no. But he came through, and, I was very proud at that moment. It really helped me because, I would make fun of him, and, but he got it. On a different note, I was instructing a young man who was just starting high school. And my instruction was through karate. I have some karate knowledge. And, boy, he didn't have any confidence when he started high school. And, I chiseled him. He worked hard. And he went on. He got his black belt. And it was a wonderful thing to see. But then this is where the kicker was. I had lost touch with him. And I was in an establishment enjoying myself with my wife, and out of nowhere, this huge guy comes up to me and grabs me and hugs me. And I was really taken, all right? Didn't know what was happening. And I was like, "Who are you?" And then I looked at his face, and then I could see that young man's face. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, him." And he said, "I love you so much. What you gave to me helped me step into a world of chaos, and it made it possible for me to walk through it." And it was just such a joy. And I gave God all the glory on that. But, just to see his face, he was so happy. He had a family now, and, he just kept talking about how wonderful those times were. And, that's the gratification I'm talking about. When you give, that's when you become a servant of God.
That's fabulous. And now that you mentioned the word chaos, I heard Bishop T.D. Jakes preach a message, Finding Christ in the Chaos. In your chaotic moments, I know we walk by faith and not by sight, but in your chaotic moments, in those darkest hours, what fond memories do you have of becoming a conqueror in those situations?
Well, I've had a lot. I'm not like just as much as any other man, I suppose. Times of trouble and overcoming them. At times, I've overcome them with the Lord's grace, and at times not so graceful. But all I can tell you is that I have to be thankful for each opportunity He gives me, so that He can lift me up, because everyone suffers with a little depression. Everyone suffers with problems, maybe of drinking, of, drugs are rampant. All these little sufferings, the Lord is watching, and He can lift you up out of it.
That's awesome. Now, as we come to a conclusion of this interview, can I ask you this? Over your lifetime, I know as we've, visited with one another in the past, you've, lived in various states. What would be um, some advice to an individual you would give to inspire them wherever they are at in life? Because I know a lot of times as Christians, we face challenges, and God is not trying to get us to relocate geographically. He's trying to get us to relocate in our hearts. So how would you inspire someone to reinvent themselves
Mm.
if they're stuck in the rut?
Well, once again, being in a rut is an opportunity. you know, there's always the moment to, tie your shoes just a little tighter and making sure that your clothes is clean and these small little things, brushing your teeth and combing your hair. Even those can be a grateful measure for you to start off on a new path. Okay? You know, thanking the Lord for the life that you have is a miracle, and He will give you the grace to move forward.
We really thank you, Brother Lewis. And as we close, I'd like to once again give an honor to God, who's the author and finisher of our faith, the author of our salvation, and thank the veterans and the enlisted men and women in the United States military for their service to our country. And so, once again, you all have a great, great day. Thank you for your time, and see you next time on What is My Purpose? I'm Andre Harris.